Hey, so today I'm going to talk about the second time I got into a psych ward, which actually happened a few days after the first time. Now, when I left, I was still quite manic and psychotic. I still thought I was, people were saying my name. I still thought I was in a movie about my life. I still thought that Frank Ocean and Young Thug took my phone and re recorded all their music so that I could hear my voice in it. I was very obsessed with Blonde at the time. I was very obsessed with Young Thug. I mean, I still am. I was very obsessed with Rodeo by Travis Scott. Like, I was very into the song 3500 and would dance. Now, I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I kept hailing a lot of taxis, like, even when I was like a block away from my apartment, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's not kind of ridiculous, it is ridiculous. And one night, now, what's strange about this night is that, sorry, just playing with my hair. Even though I was out of my mind, I wasn't doing anything particularly crazy, in my opinion, at the moment. Now, I hailed a cab and I was like a block or two away from my apartment. And I was actually on my way to my apartment because I wanted to get Zyprexa because I thought I was on my way to a fashion show, which is a whole other thing. I ran around Brooklyn, tried to get into someone's cab where people were in it because I thought I was late for a fashion show. What's very strange is a man let me into his car and I told him I was on the way to the fashion show and I think he was delivering food and I don't know why exactly he let me in his car, but he did. It's very strange what happened. Like, quite a few people would let me into their cars, which is like dangerous and strange to think about. But anyways, this was not the case. This was like at the end of the night. It was still pretty early, maybe around 10 or 11. So, I get into this guy's cab and he calls 911 on me because said he saw me doing strange things in the street. Now, is it possible that this taxi driver had been around my neighborhood quite a bit and see me do things? Because towards the end, when I was very afraid, I did like strip off quite a few of my clothes and scream like, help me, help me, help me. Even though, like, it's strange because, usually when people talk about mania, they talk about how fun it is, how full of energy they are, how much creativity they have. But really, like, having all that energy, not sleeping for months, like, thinking you're part of a movie, it gets, like, exhausting and scary after a while. And I think my mind was trying to communicate that something was wrong. So maybe he witnessed that. I really don't know. I was not familiar with this taxi driver. So then he called 911, an ambulance came. The guy in the ambulance was talking to me. I told him I was on the way to a fashion show. I have a feeling he didn't really believe me. And he told me I would be there for like 20 to 30 minutes at most. We went to the emergency room. Now, over the course of my mania, I actually had quite a few stints in the emergency room, and in general, they let me go. Or like gave me Zyprexa because I had been prescribed it, or like gave me Haldol, and they wouldn't keep me overnight, whatever. Like, for whatever reason, I was allowed to leave. This time, it's very hazy to me, but I ended up there and I ended up staying in this hospital in Brooklyn for 4 months. I spent my birthday there, I spent New Year's there, I spent Christmas there, I spent my siblings' birthdays, I spent my mom who passed away's birthday there. I spent a lot of time there. Now, the setup of this hospital was pretty much 2 hallways and a room where we had our meals and there was a TV. Over the course of my staying there, we got one more TV. There were 2 phones, and when I was first there, I was running around. Like one of the mental health workers joked that she lost like 10 pounds just by like following me around because I would run around so much. I still thought I was famous. I still thought Frank Ocean was waiting for me outside. I would look out the window, I would see all the lined up cars, and I would be like, oh, like they're waiting for me. Now, I was there like during the winter. I ended up leaving in like January, February. Um, there what my one of my biggest issues with most psych wards, or like this psych ward in particular, is like there isn't really anyone to talk to. Now I was saying a lot of weird things. I had a lot of intrusive thoughts. I thought I had lice. I thought I had bed bugs. I thought I needed to shave my head. I thought a bunch of things. Now, before I ended up in this psych ward, my two friends, I have more than two, but my two very close friends, John and Grace, came over, and I told them I was like getting lunch with all these celebrities. I had bought a dog that I couldn't take care of. They tried to tell me something was wrong. I kind of snapped at them and said, like, if you don't believe me, we can't be friends, which is, like, super sad. I'm friends with them to this day. Like, they're really awesome. The dog ended up becoming a dog model for, like, collars and stuff. Yeah, that was a trip. But, while I was there, people didn't know I was there. So, like, one of my roommates at the time was like, hey, Vivian hasn't been home in a few days. It posted it on Facebook. It got circled around. My ex-boyfriend gave the wrong address because he was under the impression that I was still in the other facility. So eventually people found out where I was. I had a delusion that my dad was sick and somewhere in the hospital. He actually was on like a vacation in Puerto Rico for most of my time there. And you know, I had people come to visit me, but like the place was pretty boring, and like sometimes there were groups, but like I had this inclination that the groups were about me, so I didn't go to them. But like when I went, they weren't really real groups. It was just like people talking in a circle. Like it didn't really feel official, and they weren't every day. They were very sporadic. Sometimes they would bring like music and hot chocolate and coffee and try to make life less boring. Now, the mental health workers there kind of liked me. They actually got me two outfits, but I like ruined them, so I threw them out, and they got really mad. When I first got there, I threw out my jacket and my jeans, which is all I was wearing. And I just thought, because I thought I had like loads of clothes that like designers were giving to me and that I would get it when I leave, and I actually broke my phone, and I like slammed on it when I was like manic, and I thought I was getting like a special phone when I left. Not true. Yeah, I stayed there for a very long time. I was on a ton of different medication. When I first got there, they injected me with Haldol a few times, which is basically it's a strong antipsychotic that stops the mania. Now, when I left this facility, it was like pretty boring, honestly, because there was really nothing to do all day besides like watch TV. I left, and I either was forced to go to a state hospital for like the rest of my life or go home with my dad. Thankfully, my dad was home, and he took me home. And the months between this psych ward and the next psych ward were some of the hardest months like I've ever been through, because I was no longer manic, but I was sedated. Like, even my therapist, when she saw me, I would go to therapy and I'd be like, what am I supposed to talk about? Like, time moves, like, really slowly. And I was sedated, I was depressed, I was crying all the time, I was psychotic, I was paranoid, I was still having auditory hallucinations. I would walk through New York City, I would get on the train, I would think everybody was talking about me, and I actually had like I was misdiagnosed as bipolar. During this time, they